1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello, this is Pastor Brian Wolfmueller. We're back, grappling with the text. Sorry for the long break, but we're back after it, and we got to finish up. We went all the way through the 10 Commandments, even 9 and 10 in the small catechism, so that all that is left is for us to consider the large catechism with the 9th and 10th commandments, false desire, and this sort of thing. We want the large catechism, and then the conclusion of the commandments, and then we'll be done. And our plan next is to go into 1 Peter. So we're going to take a look at some extended quotations from our friend Dr. Martin Luther from the Large Catechism, who has a lot to say about this commandment. Now remember, the 9th and 10th commandment has to do with covetousness. You shall not covet. That's the idea, that we don't want to desire those false things, those things which the Lord has not given us to do. And really, Luther in the Large Catechism is going to say that this commandment was especially given to the Jewish people because they thought that if they kept the commandment outwardly, outside of their body, that they had kept the commandment. So just because I didn't go and take my neighbor's home or plot to get something that belonged to my neighbor, then I could be righteous according to the commandment. And Moses is going to say, no, in fact, the commandment also has to do with your desire, with the things that you want. Now, Luther is going to give a secondary emphasis, and that is, with the 9th and 10th commandments, that we are able to get things that don't belong to us, our neighbor's home, our neighbor's inheritance, our neighbor's spouse, so that we go and we're tempting away from our neighbor the thing that should be belong to him, but we're able to do it in a way that seems right, that looks correct. This is this thing that what is legal is not necessarily what is good. So we can do lots of things that, according to the strict outward looking at them, according to the law, that they're legal, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are right and good. So here's some Luther. For we are so inclined by nature that no one desires to see another have as much as himself, and each one acquires as much as he can, and the other may fare as best as he can. And yet we pretend to be godly, and know how to adorn ourselves most finely, and conceal our rascality. See it? So you're doing what's wrong, caring for yourself and your own desires, rather than caring for the stuff that belongs to your neighbor, but you do it in such a way that it seems right. Resort to and invent adroit devices and deceitful artifices, such as now are daily most ingeniously contrived, as though they were derived from the law codes. Yea, we even dare impertinently to refer to it and boast of it, and will not have it called rascality, but shrewdness and caution. Now, you guys see what he's getting here? I mean, we do all these things and we say, well, look, it's legal, it's right. I can do it. The banks can do these sorts of things. You can do this kind of trade. It's legal. It's shrewd. It's cautious. Luther says it's rascality. Really, it's covetousness, and it's theft. In this the lawyers and jurists assist, who twist and stretch the law to suit it to their cause, stress words, and use them for subterfuge, irrespective of equity or their neighbor's necessity. See, these are the things that we should be concerned about. Our neighbor and not ourselves. But this we do legal things that just are for our own good and not for our neighbors. In short, whoever's the most expert and cunning in the affairs finds the most help in the law. They themselves say, the law favors the watchful. That's Latin. You can say it if you want. Likewise, it also in common trade, where one dexterously slips something out of another's hand, so he must look after it, or surprises and defrauds him in a matter in which he sees advantage and benefit for himself, so that the latter, perhaps on account of distress or debt, cannot regain or redeem it without injury. This would be, think of the pawn shops, for example. This has to do in common trade, or other more kind of sophisticated arrangements. We're in a kind of a poor neighborhood here at the church, which means that all up and down the streets down this way, there's all sorts of pawn shops there. There's all sorts of payday cashier check sort of thing. You don't see those stores in the nice, wealthy, rich neighborhoods, so that someone doesn't have enough money to pay a down payment for their rent, and so they get hurt even more. They end up paying more to live in a hotel than they could in a one room of a hotel than they could to buy a 30 or a 3,000 square foot house, just because they don't have the down payment. So that, distress and debt means you end up paying even more. And the former gains the half or even more. That means the person who's cheating the person and doing it legally. And yet this must not be considered as acquired by fraud or stolen, but honestly bought. In other words, if some guy, desperately needs the money, then you can give him $20 for a $200 watch, and he'll take it because he needs the money. And you say, well, that's a legal deal. Here they say, first come, first served, and everyone must look after his own interest and let another give what he can. So all these things are happening under these phrases and are protected by them. Luther's saying this is all against the 9th and the 10th commandment, you shall not covet. More. And who can be so smart as to think of all the ways in which one can get many things into his possession by such a specious pretexts? This the world does not consider wrong. See? Nor is it punished by laws, and will not see that the neighbor is thereby placed at a disadvantage, and must sacrifice what he cannot spare without injury. Yet there is no one who wishes this to be done to him. Now here is the critical question, from which we can easily perceive that such devices and pretexts are false. Remember how Jesus says it? Do unto your neighbor as you would have done unto you. So that this is the question. Do I want someone to pay me $20 for a $200 watch? Do I want someone to require a $1,000 down payment to stay in a cheap apartment? Do I want to be on the other end of this deal? And if I don't, then I know that it is wrong, and especially here, according to these commandments. In whatever way such things happen, skipping down a little bit, we must know that God does not wish you to deprive your neighbor of anything that belongs to him. Now, here is another critical point. And Luther's going to emphasize this probably when we get to it next week at the conclusion of the commandments, as that even though the second table of the law, commandments 4 through 10, have to do with our neighbor, yet all of them are to be understood in light of the first commandment, and that is with our God. So that when we're loving our neighbor, we're doing it out of fear and love and trust in God. We live our lives before the Lord. This is the thing that, whenever I study the Large Catechism, impresses me over and over again. The assumption of Luther is that everything that we do before God. God does not wish that you deprive your neighbor of anything that belongs to him, so that he suffer loss and you gratify your avarice, greed, with it, even if you could keep it honorably before the world. In other words, we are not living before the world, we are living before God. We are not acting before the world, we are acting before God. We are not being judged by the world if a thing is right or wrong. We are not being judged by the law of the land if a thing is right or wrong. We have a different standard. We are being judged by God. So that never in human law could you have something that says you shall not covet. I mean, you just can't. You could never be arrested by a policeman for coveting something. Human law cannot cover this. But God's law can, and it does. For it's a secret and insidious imposition practiced under the hat, as we say, that it may not be observed. For although you go your way as if you had done no one any wrong, you have nevertheless injured your neighbor. And if this is not called stealing and cheating, yet it is called coveting your neighbor's property, that is, aiming at possession of it, enticing it away from him without his will, and being unwilling to see him enjoy what God has granted him. You got it? Okay, one more thing from Luther. Therefore, we allow these commandments to remain in their ordinary meaning, that it is commanded, first, that we do not desire our neighbor's damage. Again, remember that our desires are governed by the Lord's law, nor even assist or give occasion for it, but gladly wish and leave him what he has, and besides, advance and preserve for him what may be for his profit and service, as we should wish to be treated. Do unto others, remember, like this. So here we are, and we're looking, and instead of looking at ourselves and saying how I can get more, we instead look at our neighbor and see that not only that he can keep what belongs to him, but that also his would increase, and that even if ours is going to decrease, that's okay. We're looking out for our neighbor's good. Thus, these commandments are especially directed against envy and miserable avarice, God wishing to remove all causes and sources, whence arise everything by which we do injury to our neighbor, and therefore he expresses it in plain words, thou shalt not covet, etc. For he would especially have the heart pure. See, the heart. This is where the covetousness desires come from the heart. Although we shall never attain to that as long as we live here, so that this commandment will remain, like all the rest, one that will constantly accuse us and show how godly we are in the sight of God. A little snark from Luther to end this thing. Remember the lex semper accusat? I think that's how to spell it. The law always accuses. This phrase made famous by Melanchthon. Luther picks up on it here. This law, like all of them, constantly accuses us. And Paul reminds us in Romans, I wouldn't have known what it is to covet unless the law had said, you shall not covet. So this covetousness flows below the radar of the conscience, and yet the commandment strikes it home and kills us. All right, there you go. We've got the Large Catechism on the 9th and 10th Commandments. Luther lumps them together in one conversation about covetousness. Next week, we'll look at the conclusion of the Commandments, and then we will be finished with the whole deal. We remembered this, right? Boy, that seems like a long time ago. Hit this button, and you can subscribe to the Worldview Everlasting. Get all the stuff. See the new show that they got going on. My thing over here, the Worldwide Wolfmueller, that's wolfmueller.co. I got everything on the blog there. All right. Oh, I forgot. Did I show you guys this? I totally forgot about this. We published the Large Catechism, the whole text, as a little book. You can get it on Lulu. So if you go to wolfmueller.co and hit the books thing and go to Everyone's Luther, you can find the Large Catechism there. It's the same text we've been using, just printed out in a book, so you can put it in your pocket and take it with you. Always have Luther staring you down.
Worldview Everlasting is solid, Christian, and free because it is viewer-supported. Your monthly gift of $5, $10, or $25 is the reason that we can continue to improve and expand these tools for online Christian outreach and discipleship. To make a one-time donation, sign up for the Lutheran Ninja Clan regular giving, or to find information about how to put Worldview Everlasting in your congregation's budget, click Donate Now.
There it is.